Greetings fellow men, Servus Männer, this is Red Pill Germany again, and today I wanna comment on the incidents that took place on the weekend at the G20 summit in Hamburg, Germany. Now in the first part of this video I wanna briefly go over the events again, really briefly, because I think you all know from the news basically what happened. Then I want to tell you what I think the aftermath is going to be, so what will happen as a consequence, and why I think that is concerning Antifa and these left-winged radicals, and give you a better understanding of how they operate in Germany, because in places like the US you see just now how these blocks really form. We have them for a long time in Europe already, and then in the end I will tell you why I think it was a brilliant move, politically speaking, by Angela Merkel to have the summit in a town like Hamburg this year. So what happened? What did we see here? At the G20 summit, all the globalist leaders of the world came together to discuss about topics such as the redistribution of wealth from the countries with a good industry to the countries with none, and things like global warming and what we can do in order to give unproductive countries even more money. Also, they were discussing about how we can get even more refugees out of the Middle East and Africa, and how to settle them and their families for good in northern countries. So all these things are worth protesting, of course. So I'm also against these meetings and against the people and the topics that are being discussed there. That is not the issue. But actually the people who were coming to protest in Hamburg were actually people who think that they don't do enough. Yeah? So I would protest them for doing what they're doing, and they are protesting because they think that Angela Merkel and the other heads of state are evil capitalist oppressors of the third world. Now, in most of these people, okay, are these tree huggers and these useful idiots on the left, these romantic hippie kinds of people, special snowflakes, SJWs, and they don't really burn down cities and hurt people. They are, of course, sympathizers of those people, but they rather go after people's jobs, having smear campaigns, spreading lies, this kind of thing. But they are more for the quote-unquote creative protest, creative and peaceful protest, right? No, but then another thing happened. Protests got really aggressive and really violent when the Black Bloc entered the scene, and the Black Bloc now is a completely different bunch. They are armed with metal rods and with stones. They have also slingshots, very powerful slingshots, with which they can shoot steel bullets, and they can cause injuries like gunshot wounds actually when you're not wearing armor. So if you are hit with a steel ball coming from one of those slingshots, you will probably be dead. So I think that would be attempted murder. And they come armed with these weapons in full force, and they burned down cars, they burned and looted local stores, and they also attacked the police violently, and many policemen were injured. So I would say this is attempted murder given the weapons that they were using in the process. Also, the lootings and the fires that they started there show that they have no respect at all for the local working class and the inhabitants of Hamburg. But how could they empathize with shop owners when the Black Bloc people have never worked a day in their lives, probably? Now, left-wing politicians blame the police, of course, that they were provoking these activists, but it is clear that they brought weapons into this city, and they prepared the rooftops also with stones that they got out of the pavement from the street. So this is clearly not someone who got just provoked by the police, and this wasn't planned at all. I mean, who are these politicians kidding? I mean, I'm talking about the Green Party and the Left Party in Germany. They are really saying that peaceful protests got out of hand by a provocative stance on the side of the police. That is utter bullshit. I mean, for months and months before that, on internet forums and stuff like that, these Antifa people were preparing how they're gonna get there, what weapons they will use and what they will do, and they were really eager to fight the police and to set the place on fire. That was planned long before. Also, the social democratic mayor of Hamburg, Olaf Scholz, is in a bit of trouble now because he said that this G20 summit will basically be like a big happy picnic. So the police has arrested, of course, a lot of the rioters, but I don't think that a lot of them will go to jail because in earlier years when there were G-Summit events or similar occasions with a lot of intense rioting from the left, from the Black Bloc, from Antifa, there have been many arrests, but not a single person went to jail ever. And the reason for that is, of course, that the police can arrest as many of them as they want. The judges, the courts, they always let them go in the end. Because Antifa is not a terrorist organization or something like New Jersey labeled them now. Antifa is not some malcontent youths who just want to fuck shit up. No, Antifa is actually the militarized wing of the left-wing parties in Germany. Just like in the 1930s we had the Rotfront in Germany. So Antifa is actually a paramilitary force of the German government as far as that government is left-wing. That means on the state level of left-ruled states and on the community level where the mayor or district mayor or something like that is from a left-wing party. Then they will always get tax money and funnel it into the pockets of these Antifa activists and radicals. Just for your reference, Germany is spending 100 million euros every year for so-called projects against the political right. Yeah, because of our history, of course. Yeah, we have to fight against the political right. Yeah, and big chunk of that money goes to Antifa. There are many local groups and many cities, such as Munich, give them entire buildings where they can host their meetings and their workshop on how to attack the police, how to build bombs, and how to harass people properly. They have also internet forums and mailing lists and message boards where they exchange the home and work address and the photos of bloggers and journalists and generally people who are more on the conservative side, who are not against capitalism, which is a big crime in Germany, of course. And they would then pressure their employers, they would attack their families, attack their children also, burn their cars and burn their houses. They regularly attack party offices of the opposition parties in Germany, and they also pressure lots of journalists, of course. Now you have to understand that Antifa is not a criminal organization. It is part of the state. Not officially, not on the books, of course, but this 10 million euro fund that is used against the political right, from this money, a lot of these initiative, activists, and youth organizations are funded. And many of them are actually Antifa people. Many work for NGOs. Many work in some citizens' office or information bureau against right-wing extremism, right? Amadeo Antonio Stiftung comes to mind, which is basically a bunch of Stasi people that are now working to indoctrinate Germans and to purge our institutions from so-called right-wingers. So Antifa is not fighting against the system. Antifa is a militarized part of the system. They are paid by taxpayers' money. That is something that you guys have to understand. And if you think that these NGOs and George Soros and these people, that they don't do exactly the same right now in the United States, for example, then you are gravely mistaken, my friends. I cannot speak for other countries that have a strong black bloc like Italy, Greece, Spain and France, but I can say that in Germany at least Antifa is, thanks to people like Manuela Schwesig and Heiko Maas, is a substantial part of the German state already. They get funding from the state and they attack when certain members of the government give them a target. And this is how the Social Democrats, the Green Party, and the left-wing Communist Party, Die Linke, are dealing with their political opponents. Now Angela Merkel and her former conservative CDU is of course also a figure of hatred for the Black Bloc, but they don't do so much against them. And I want to say towards the end of the video that Angela Merkel is really brilliant. I mean, evil, but brilliant. I think the Emperor from Star Wars would still have a lot to learn from Angela Merkel, because Hamburg is a city with a long history of left-winged riots and left-winged radicals. Just look up Schanzenviertel and Rote Flora, for example. They are part of the inventory of Hamburg, and of course they are subsidized by the state there. Now the mayor of Hamburg, Scholz, is a social democrat, and of course there would have been rioting. Angela Merkel knew that. She knew exactly what was going to happen, and she knew exactly that all the left-wing parties would blame the police afterwards, as they always do. And she also knows that most of the Germans actually despise this display of public unrest and state of disorder. We actually despise this kind of rioting and violence. A clear majority of the Germans at least thinks that way. And of course we have elections coming up this fall in just a couple of weeks. Now of course the danger is that people would blame Angela Merkel that she should have known that this would happen in Hamburg, and she should have picked a place in a rural area that would have been better to defend and to shield against those rioters. But Angela Merkel can say then, well, I will not bow down to violence on the street. Our free and open society cannot bow to the pressure from these radicals. Yeah? And most of the Germans would say, well, we are on the side of the police, we are on the side of law and order, and all these left-wingers are now actually taking Antifa's side in the discussion. So I think that Angela Merkel's stratagem here was that she would maybe lose some votes because people blame her, but she would actually hurt the left-wing parties even more because people would be appalled by the fact that they defended the rioters here and that they're clearly on the side of the rioters. So maybe it hurts her a little bit, but she thinks that it hurts the left-wing parties in the eyes of Germans even more. Because most of the electorate of the Green Party and the Social Democrats are not violent people per se, they are sympathizers maybe, and they are useful idiots. But if they see what these rioters did to Hamburg, then they would probably be pretty appalled. By people like Cem Özdemir from the Green Party clearly said that everything was the police's fault. So I would say that lots of arrests have been made. None of them will go to jail because the system is looking out for its little sons and daughters, these spoiled middle-class brats who are the militarized arm of the left-wing parties. Sometimes their day job is at some NGO or at some information center against right-winged extremism, where they get paid with taxpayers' money. The same German working class that they despise and that they vilify every day and that they want to kill so eagerly. And then on the weekends and in the evenings, they just set fire to a couple of businesses and burn some cars. And these people are doing so on the clear orders of left-wing politicians, and they're funded with a 100 million euro fund from the German taxpayer every year. And as I said, I think Angela Merkel did that knowingly and on purpose, and I think it was, politically speaking, a really smart idea. The Emperor would have been impressed. Enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, Servus, Kameraden.